All right. Okay, it's 11:37 a.m. Welcome everybody to the Stewardship Subcommittee. We are going to call the meeting to order. For the record, we have Mayor Pro Tem Megan Perkins and Councilor Barbara Campbell with Councilor Mike Riley on his way. We have two items on the agenda today: safe parking and shelter, an update and guidance request from Amy Fraley and Brooke O'Keefe, both City of Bend staff. And then we also have an update and a preview into the year ahead of the Deschutes County Cities of Bend, La Pine, Redmond, and Sisters Coordinated Houseless Response Office, also known as CHRO or PRO, that will have Executive Director for the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, or COIC, the future home of CHRO, Tammy Bainey, Executive Director, who will be helping us with the presentation, who's going to be leading the presentation, I should say. And just want to thank her because we gave her short notice, and I'm sure she's got such a busy schedule that she probably rearranged it for us. Thank you so much, Tammy. And she's going to be joining us online. But before we move on to the first agenda, there's one thing that we need your vote on, the only thing that you'll be voting on in the Stewardship Subcommittee, and that's the meeting minutes. If I could please receive a motion.
Move to approve the November 27th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approved. So first presentation, Amy and Brooke, please. Floor is yours. And Lynn McConnell. That's all. You're lucky today.
It is the whole show.
What a treat.
It's probably like how many city staff joke here.
The ratio is definitely skewed.
Just say it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity today. My name is Amy Fraley, and I am the Senior Program Manager for Houselessness Solutions. And I'm joined by Lynn McConnell, who is our Housing Director, and Brooke O'Keefe, the Shelter Coordinator. And we're going to be providing a shelter update and ask for some guidance on safe parking. We have a formal presentation, but we encourage all sorts of questions, or if there's anything to be clarified, please feel free to jump right in. And with that, the Housing Department supports council goals by several actions. Right now, we're spending a lot of time and energy on that bullet number one, which is addressing the gap in shelter funding. We currently are facing a $3.6 million deficit for the biennium. And we're optimistic about the short session, but we are also aware that this will be an ongoing need that we have to address as a city and as a state. The shelter group, which consists of the two of us, really focuses on that bottom bullet on measuring progress. And Brooke and I are trying diligently to maintain those 505 shelter beds that we have in the community, specifically those low barrier beds that the city supports, and looking for new opportunities to increase those resources and support it in any way we can. We are in the week of the pit count right now through the HLC.
Can you say what pit is?
Oh, pit, I'm sorry. The point in time count, I believe it begins tomorrow night. And so the HLC is counting along with community partners to see that the city has the most accurate information in the community and HUD of people experiencing houselessness in Bend. Houselessness continues to rise. It is a crisis that we expect to continue. In 2023, 1,012 people were houseless in the city, which was a 28% increase from the previous pit. And 73% of those people are unsheltered. The pie charts that we brought today are a stark contrast to what we hear in the community sometimes about houselessness being tourism. And what we see here is that 44% of people in our community that are experiencing houselessness have been here 20 years or more. The pie chart on the right indicates how difficult it is to emerge from houselessness once you find yourself without a home, where it takes more than 3 years for most people to find their way out of shelter and off of the street. the city has been very aggressive with trying to address these concerns within our community. And perhaps the greatest impact has been the Navigation Center, which is our 100-bed low barrier walk-up shelter on Second Street. As you know, it's under renovation right now. And so we have 3 different locations to meet this 100-bed total. I'm glad Tammy's on the line. I'm hoping she's on the line so we can highlight that COIC through the executive order funding has been instrumental in providing those day services at the former Blue Dog location. We're also using the actual Second Street site while it's under renovation, though the fire sprinklers went off yesterday morning at 6 a.m. and flooded the building with the people there.
Flooded people who were sleeping in.
People that were sleeping 6 a.m. There was a malfunction with the thaw. The sprinkler went off. They had opened generously up to 70 beds, though 50 was the focus, but with the cold snap, they went ahead and opened it larger. And so we're working on addressing that today. I should say that Shepherd's House, along with facilities, is cleaning up.
And that was at NAV.
That was at the Second Street location of NAV.
Yep, okay.
Yep. Mm.
Oh, boy.
So it's
Just a side note, we are assessing damage record that has been as a result of the storm, so make sure that
thank you.
that we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
get in the running, because the state, given that the state has declared an emergency, we can become eligible to get reimbursed for some of those.
Thank you so much for saying that.
I'll carry right now.
Yeah. We'll see. And Central Oregon Restoration is on site as well as the fire company, Severson Fire.
Can you share, in case anyone's watching, might be interested, what those mean for underfunding? What does DAS mean for people who are watching, or what does
Yes,
EO mean
thank
for people who are
you.
watching? Just
Thank you. Department of
Someone who's sitting here.
Department of Administrative Services, and there we received a $2.5 million grant 2 years ago. I was here 2 years ago, and so we're drawing down on that money. Shepherd's House is also receiving direct funding from Oregon Housing and Community Services for the overnight operations, and so we are plowing forward. Though there is a significant deficit for this program.
So daily something.
It's Department of
administrative.
Oh,
Department of Administrative Services.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then EO.
Executive order funding.
Got it. Thank you.
I was trying to keep that snazzy graph.
Oh.
Next to it that says
And I was noticing how snazzy it is. Yeah, so that
that
is
is
not.
Shepherd's House grant. Even with the 3 locations, they're also using the front part of the Rainbow Motel. And so there are about 40 beds there. There's 70 beds right now on the Second Street for overnight shelter. Daytime services are at the former Blue Dog location. And then we're circulating a lease right now for the Allstate building to put more of our case management. The Allstate building, which is right next to the Rainbow
Oh, that
Motel.
little.
Our little.
Yeah, the Peterson.
place.
Oh.
So that has recently become vacant, and so
Yeah.
it'll be another opportunity to provide those case management services that are so critical to NAB and moving people into more permanent housing.
So we have 70 at NAV, 40 at Franklin,
Yep,
and how many are at Stepping Stone? Right? Oh, you're gonna get to that.
yep,
now.
I'm gonna get to
I
that
want to kill the
one.
late. Okay.
Just to highlight really quickly the exceptional work that the Navigation Center staff and Shepherd's House has done. They're continuing with 3 different locations and shuffling people around to transition people to more permanent housing, both permanent and transitional. In December, they were over capacity yet again, and everybody's seen the numbers for the previous year. And my PowerPoint just disappeared. So I'll be looking at
Malfunction too.
just malfunction. So there are 38,000 plus nights of shelter that were provided in last year. So we're going to move on to the Franklin Avenue shelter, which is the Rainbow. It is the back portion of the former Rainbow Motel. This project is strictly the governor's executive order funding, though the council and the county commissioners set aside $750,000 each to fund that shelter location. Because of the executive order funding, we haven't had to touch that yet. And so we are operating and maintaining 60 plus beds in that location while preserving those funds. In December of 2023, you can see that 61 clients were served. That includes 14 families. And then 22 medically vulnerable individuals. We have seen that high need in the community. Initially, we had set aside the 288 units, but the need for medically vulnerable folks has far exceeded those 2 set asides. and many, many families. And then Stepping Stone, which Council Perkins just asked about, our operator is Neighbor Impact. I'm sure Council remembers that this is an OCF turnkey purchase.
Oregon Community
Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation. Thank you, Lynn. And it was purchased in 2021. It was supposed to go through significant renovations fairly quickly, but instead council directed the city to open a shelter. And so it was used for shelter beds. Then it went under renovations. It was opened in February of 2023. They're at capacity. You can see through July to November that we're almost 7,000 nights of shelter were provided, 72 unique individuals and 8 transitions. One of the things we have seen at this location is a very high number of medically fragile individuals. Again, when the shelter opened, I believe it was 4 households that were on hospice just right out of the gate. And then you'll also see quite a few families. There are always minor children in this shelter as well. And there's a full range of services, including case management. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brooke, who's going to talk about Central Oregon Villages and provide a little more information about the process that the city took to put this location here and to fund community outreach. I know it's very relevant right now. And then she'll talk about safe parking.
Along with the 3 city-owned shelters that Amy mentioned. Good call. The city also supports Central Oregon Villages temporary outdoor shelter. The site is located on the corner of Bear Creek and 27th on property that Central Oregon Villages leases from Desert Streams Church. This is a high barrier shelter with 8 pallet shelters and 12 stick-built cabins, a shower and bathroom trailer, a kitchen trailer, and case management office on site. So far this fiscal year, they've provided over 1,300 nights of shelter, served 23 unduplicated clients, and supported 5 clients in transitioning to permanent housing. The city entered into phase 1 of this contract in June of 2022, which provided $45,300 for site identification, community engagement, and to develop and refine program design and operations. With these funds, Central Oregon Villages spent time engaging with neighbors, including hosting multiple community meetings, as well as going door to door to answer questions and provide information about the program. Following approval of their House Bill 2006 application, the city amended the contract to add phase 2, which increased the contract amount to $1.5 million to support site development and operations through the extended expiration date of December 35th of 2025. This contract is supported by $750,000 of county ARPA and $750,000 of city ARPA. In addition to more traditional shelter, the city also provides technical assistance and support to the safe parking programs. In Bend and Central Oregon as a whole, we often see many folks who are camping in their RVs or cars. In rural areas where public transportation schedules and routes are limited, having a vehicle can be really essential for folks who work irregular schedules, like overnight shifts, or folks who are facing medical challenges and need to be able to get to their medical appointments frequently. We know that many shelters have small parking lots and cannot accommodate multiple large RVs or even everyone having their own car. So folks are often hesitant to give up their RV or car without a promise of permanent housing. So this becomes a barrier when people are accessing shelter. Safe parking provides a creative solution to this issue and has proven to be a really effective shelter alternative. There are 4 sites in the city of Bend with a total of 12 spaces. 3 of these sites are operated by Reach, and the 4th is operated by Central Oregon Villages, which is separate from their temporary outdoor shelter. All 4 sites are located at communities of faith. So far this fiscal year, they've served over 40 unique individuals and supported 11 people in transitioning to permanent housing, which is more than 2 a month.
Yeah, I'd like to highlight that because that is a really high rate of transitions for not that many spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, this works. And so whatever we can do to ensure that we're getting, and I know that you're working diligently, and thank you to Commissioner Adair for also, really being a champion of this and going around and trying to get more spots. But yeah, that is a really high transition rate for for 6 months.
Well,
It's
You know,
astonishing. Yeah.
just to bring up also that this does not involve city financial support at all, which is huge. So this is happening through our network of providers and partners.
Mhm.
And we're gonna continue to talk about it, but that's a pretty big deal to get this much bang for our buck
Mhm.
without the city having to write a whole bunch of checks.
Mhm.
I thought we might help with hygiene with the porta potty. Is that right? This city can, no, not
We're
even.
not,
Yeah.
but it is possible, there is a reach contract, but that
Mhm.
reach contract is not utilized for safe parking expenses at this time.
Wow.
Just Brooks time.
You said we're gonna talk more about it,
Yeah,
Lynn?
yeah. we gotta
Is
go
that
more
now or
slides.
later? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have lots of time.
The 4 sites mentioned in the last slide were made possible by City Council's adoption of the Safe Parking Code in April of 2021. Just as a quick refresher, the code allows safe parking to be hosted on sites owned or leased by nonprofits, businesses, religious entities, and public entities. There are 2 types of safe parking in the code. Oops, sorry. Overnight camping allows for up to 3 spaces for vehicles or RVs on a paved or gravelled lot. Sanitation services must be provided, including trash disposal, a restroom, and hand washing station. No city authorization is required. However, we do work closely with the 2 sites that are operating under this part of the code. The second category is transitional overnight parking accommodations. This allows for up to 6 spaces for either vehicles, RVs, huts, or other movable or temporary structures. Sanitation services are also required, as well as case management or supervision. The site must be at least 150 feet away from a child care facility unless the property is owned by a religious entity, owned or leased by a religious entity or public entity. And the sites must also provide a notification to adjacent neighbors. 3 of the 4 sites are located near a public school and have a preschool on site. One of the sites previously had a father and child staying there, and the child was able to attend the preschool that was just across the parking lot. We know that access to reliable transportation can sometimes become a barrier for folks getting their kids to school. Being able to walk across the parking lot allowed this family easy access to education. And we also know that childcare can be a barrier for folks trying to gain employment, to help them access housing. Simply having a safe place to stay allows family stability, which in turn creates that domino effect for solutions to other barriers that are preventing permanent housing. This is just another way that safe parking supports, or is a creative solution that supports people experiencing houselessness.
So what's the difference between the 2? The overnight camping and the transitional overnight parking?
The transitional overnight parking allows for up to 6 spaces, where the overnight camping allows for just 3. And then the transitional overnight parking has a application with the city that is processed. Mhm. And it also allows for non-vehicles like huts or temporary structures. That's one of the big differences as well.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, I know another question. On the case management or supervision, who is providing that?
The host is the community of faith currently at all of the sites, and then Reach and Central Oregon Villages provide the case management. for
They're
folks.
doing the case management. Yeah, thank you.
So as I mentioned in the last few slides, this has proven to be a really effective solution for individuals and families. I've been meeting with safe parking programs at least quarterly, and over the past few months, I've engaged with them more frequently than that. Out of our meetings, we've seen a need for a more coordinated and comprehensive effort to engage other entities that might be interested in hosting safe parking. We know that the loudest voices are often the voices of opposition, which can be a bit daunting for organizations as they start to think about hosting or being a provider for this type of service. In collaboration with our partners, we have scheduled an informational session for religious organizations to come and hear about safe parking. This meeting will allow us to get into the weeds on some of the technical questions and have and give an opportunity for them to have their questions answered by experienced providers and hosts. This meeting will be held in council chambers on March 5th, and we're happy to report back following. And I'm gonna turn it over to Lynn.
Yeah, and just wanted to say I have one more sort of follow-up slide to get some direction from y'all. Did want to just really lay it on thick a little bit for Brooke and her efforts in this realm. It's pretty cool to see how she has been able to sort of grab onto this faith-based group and help support them in finding ways to provide these services and to tell their story to other faith-based groups to help bring them along. That is a really cool power that I think Brooke has demonstrated despite her understated tone compared to some of the rest of us. And just really am proud of the work that she's done to sort of help channel these folks into the next phase. So really great work so far.
And we have such an opportunity there. We're talking about an additional 80 parking lots around the city, just with faith-based organizations. I just think it's tremendous. I hope that the folks who are already participating will be at the meeting
Oh, yes.
to share their stories.
They
I
will
love
be
that idea of the
leading the
ambassadors.
meeting.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So really exciting. I think you all have probably seen some of the media around Redmond doing safe parking, and that's largely the Mountain View Fellowship helping bring that to light. So we feel like it's a tremendous opportunity. So this is a safe parking site. This is what safe parking can look like also on this slide. You all, hey, Mike, Councilor Riley, come on up. So this safe parking site is less than 2 blocks from where we are all sitting in City Hall right now, and is, I'd say, at times less intrusive than a larger shelter, or sort of the money that it takes to stand up a permanent facility takes a lot, whereas these operate sort of outside of a lot of city support other than the staff that we already have in place. So really wanted to get some direction from you all on where we should go next, because there are a lot of different efforts and energies going on. I think these are sort of 3 options, I'll say, on the spectrum of how we can lean into this work. The first is, do you want city staff to continue to lean in, do more than what we are doing right now, which is sort of facilitation role, et cetera? What is the city's role in terms of how you all see this work today? Second is, should we continue to lean into the partnerships and do the majority of work through the partnerships as we are today? Third is knowing that you'll get some additional information from the CHRO and what they're doing, which is similar and in many ways parallel to what the work that we are doing on the city level, looking for sites, although they are looking for something potentially a little larger and that would be maybe collaborative with other entities. We may be able to fall in behind that in identifying sites that are smaller and work for the CHRO, really trying to get your sense of how much you want us to continue to proceed with this program and lean in from the city level. With that, what's important to know, the opportunities for program support is that currently REACH does have funding, in our understanding, to continue to staff additional support, additional sites with case management and support that would take no additional city resources. Again, the city resources that are going into this are staff time, which is already programmed in. So that is sort of what we wanted to get a sense from you all in our final slide of, where do we take it from here? Do you all feel like we're on the right track? Do we go bigger? Do we go smaller? Do we hold tight? Where would you all like to see us go?
I mean, I would like us to go full steam ahead. Yeah. I think there's a lot more to investigate. I mean, you said, nonprofits, businesses, religious institutions and public entities. I think that we are missing 3 of the 4 of those right now. And we already have Brooke doing such an amazing job with the religious organizations. What can we be doing, and what can the city be putting on the table too? I would like to, I know that we have a lot of parking lots in a lot of areas that I know, have in the past been discounted because of where they are or this and that, but maybe I would like to take a look at it again. What's the saying? Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, I think we should put our money where our mouth is a little bit. That's my suggestion. But and I think this could work in a complementary fashion to what the CHRO is doing. And I think you're right. I think the CHRO is looking, you know, a little bit possibly bigger, but we'll get to that later when we talk about that work. But that's just that's my thinking. I think there's so many nonprofit. I mean, there's so many opportunities that I would like to see us investigate.
I was going to say yes, and exactly that same. I would like us to look at our own parking lots. I think that the opportunity to lead by example, you know, as I just mentioned, how valuable I think it will be to have the folks who are already participating at the meeting that's planned. Well, we need to be one of the ones that's already participating. We need to be able to tell those success stories, demonstrate that this can be done in spots that maybe nobody has considered. And I just think that's essential to us being able to encourage, you know, get other organizations to also participate.
Yeah.
So all day long, yes, I want us looking at our own parking lots.
First of all, I'm sorry I was late. I got the times screwed up in my brain this morning, so I was thinking
Have
12
never done
o'clock.
that.
I know. I was thinking 12 o'clock. Look at that, I'm like 3 minutes early.
You walked in and said, go big, so.
So there we go.
You're already winning.
So, I mean, I didn't hear the whole presentation, and again, I apologize. Generally speaking, I'd like us to do as much as we can with this program in a way that works well for the community and that helps meet the need in the community. And I agree that we should be part of that solution, the city and its facilities where it makes sense. So I'm generally supporting what you both are saying.
The program is just so tremendous. You know, we talk about what a generous community we have. I recently, not recently, a few months ago, learned about a food donation. They just come right to your house. They'll pick up, and well, the thing I learned is how many thousands and thousands of pounds of food they're getting in this program that I had not heard of until there was a postcard at my door. And you know, that I just feel like we have so many people in the community who want to help, who see this problem and want to be able to do so. And, you know, this is the way for folks to make that kind of transition over to being proud of the help that they're able to provide through their business or their faith community or their own city, knowing that their city is doing everything. You know, I just think there are so many people who really would lean into that, just right now overwhelmed with what can they do, how do they help. You know, this is it. And especially with the lack of funding, when we're so concerned about even keeping open our traditional shelters, this is the way to actually start to even add capacity when we don't have money. We cannot buy another motel. But we could find another 30 places. You know, that's the scale of a motel is 30 units. You know, 30 parking places is attainable without spending money.
And I agree, Councillor Campbell, that this feels like a less impactful way to help than some of our shelters do to nearby neighbors, the folks who may not even realize that this safe parking site is within a handful of blocks of them versus the larger shelters feels different, I think, to some folks. And so recognizing that there is a balancing act there with the community, this feels like a great way to get additional help to people, especially as our shelters are at an overcapacity, our permanent shelters. We are continuing to see the need, you know, show up on our front door, especially with the weather of the last couple of weeks, but we're at capacity even when the weather is good. And so there's just a huge need. Seeing the successes of folks who just need a safe place to be. I think we've talked before, perhaps, that in England, they call folks who are homeless rough sleepers. And I think that that's pretty accurate. And if you think about how do you get a good night's sleep so that you can go to work or take care of your health? If you don't have a safe place that you can park all night, if you know, God forbid you don't have a house already or a shelter that's permanent, being able to sleep through the night in a safe place is a big deal. So we are really thankful to our partners who have come out of the woodwork to support us in this. We're also, I think you heard at the beginning, we're seeing an incredible number of folks on hospice and with different pretty significant medical needs show up in our shelters. And we're thankful we're able to provide them with some dignity in their last hours and days of life. But it is heartbreaking to our service providers, and we're so thankful for all the work they're doing supporting our community. So thank you. I think, did you all need anything else? I think we heard, let's do it all.
Start with that. Look at parking lots,
Destigmatize.
you know, start
Parking lot by
suggesting.
parking lot.
We actually just went through a pretty comprehensive process tied to the next item with the CHRO update,
Yeah.
where we identified public properties. We did a comprehensive review of our city property, so we can use the work that we
Yes.
did from that list to advance.
So staff will work on narrowing down that list in collaboration with the CHRO, who was looking at lists for their own purposes as well, and make sure that internally we have a handful of options to bring back to either this group or to the larger council in the near term to consider for future expansion areas.
And just, you may have already talked about this when I missed it, but that we're still requiring access to bathrooms and or
Yeah.
hand washing kinds of stuff, right? That's part of the program stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
We will send you the presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was gonna send you an email and ask. I appreciate you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Brooke, you in particular. Thank you for knocking on
Well,
doors.
I mentioned it, but Commissioner Dare could not say enough good things about Brooke
Oh.
at our Crow meeting.
I
this week.
believe that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So the next person to present is Tammy Bainey. As I mentioned earlier, she's the Executive Director of COIC, future home of CHRO. And is she on?
I am.
Oh, there you are. And before we go over to you, I just also wanted to share with you the city managers and staff's request of you, the direction from you. So the overarching goal of the presentation is to provide an update to you on the recent activities of the CHRO with a focus on the strategy to address unsheltered houseless. We'll focus for short session to stabilize funding for existing shelters. If successful there, if successful there, there's a desire to participate in funding for unsheltered strategies. So we'd like to get your direction on that as well. Thank you, Tammy. Floor is yours. And then we're going to pull up the presentation.
Oh, good. Wait, sorry, I was rejoining. Am I rejoined?
Yes, you're rejoined, but we don't see you.
We don't
Okay,
see.
well,
Want to be seen.
I don't mind being seen. Let me. Okay, it's saying because the host has, I can't show my video because the host has stopped it.
We will see if we can take care of that on our end.
Okay, it's still, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I combed my hair and everything.
Huh. We just see if we can have Juan come and look at it.
Okay,
Okay. Tammy, why don't you, we'll work on you getting your video, but I don't think that should stop you from starting the presentation.
no, not at all. So would you like to cue us up? We do have some slides, and thank you, Mickey. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. And I will do my best in providing an update and overview. And so please pepper us with questions. I believe that this is going to be a bit of a team effort. Mayor Pro Tem Eric, please, Mickey, step in. I want to make sure that I start off with thank yous, and part of the thank yous go to Amy, to Lynn, to Brooke in the work that they are doing that sometimes doesn't maybe show up in the Coordinated Houseless Response Office work, But as they mentioned, as they were departing their discussion, it is all interconnected. And because of these efforts, we are starting to see some real improvements in and access to additional assets and opportunities for people to get out of the weather. So thank you so much. So the background, of course, and I'll also to say to Councillor Riley, some of this you'll be hearing it at our next board meeting too. So if this is duplicative at that point, I'll just give an apologies in advance. But of course, in 2021, there was a focused effort by Deschutes County and the cities therein to champion disrupting really homelessness in the Deschutes County area. And that was successful in securing funding and a pilot through House Bill 4123. And so that provided some funding, also allowed for the ability to establish a coordinated houseless response office and to operationalize efforts to address homelessness. So getting into the role for COIC, we are the Council of Governments for the region. And so this is a space where we are here to support our cities and the counties. And so this, in coordination with our own board, this is a natural fit for us to be able to support this effort. And so the governing body for the Coordinated Houseless Response Office is its own standalone governing body. And those members operate providing the strategic guidance and direction for the strategic plan and the achievements that they hope to see out of that work. There are some changes probably from the last update, and that is that there are a couple of members that have been added to the Coordinated Houseless Response Office board as ex officio non-voting members. And that is someone representing the continuum of care, which is the HUD designation. And that is required to do all of the planning, to be able to allocate funding into the region, to do the point in time count. So some of the things that you're seeing regionally. And so that is represented by the Homeless Leadership Coalition. And in addition to that, we have a community action agency, which is really tapped to do a lot of the prevention work and currently the data collection for the region. And so there is a representative that is now from Neighbor Impact on the board as well. And so we are providing the staff to achieve the goals that are set out within the strategic plan. And in addition to that, we also have the commitment of the city administrator and managers and myself to continue to support this work as we go forward, knowing that a lot of it really is the policy direction as the individual jurisdictions and how that feeds into the Coordinated Houseless Response Office Board too. And so there is an agreement between the Deschutes County and the cities, but there also is an MOU between Deschutes County, who is the holder of the funding from the legislative pilot, and COIC. And that provides a scope of work for us to fulfill the obligations that are within the staffing requirements. Now I'm going to pause there really quickly and see if my, okay, hi.
Hey.
Okay.
Hoping Tammy to share with my fellow counselors here, having those two individuals on the board, the addition of those two individuals on the board over the last couple of meetings, it has been so beneficial to us because, I mean, we see this all the time, right? You talk about something and then if you can actually turn to someone and say, is that a good idea? You know, and they can say, well, let me tell you if this is a good idea or not, and how this would actually work in this community. And so that has been a really important addition to the boards. Great. Yep.
Thank you for that. And the COIC board also felt that that would be a good connection too. And I see it in the meetings we talk a lot about data collection and having Neighbor Impact there to be able to say, yes, we collect that, or no, we don't, or maybe we shouldn't, and here's why. So the richness, yes, thank you for pointing that out. So one of the obligations and requirements for the House Bill 4123 is that the Coordinated Houseless Response Office have an advisory committee. And so that advisory committee is going to be providing insights and assistance in helping the Coordinated Houseless Response Office to achieve their goals. And so we are currently seating that board right now. And so those are the folks that sort of have a better not a better understanding, have maybe a broader understanding of some of the day-to-day pieces of the puzzle to addressing homelessness. And so you'll see that list in the engagement with the community to fill the at-large position is currently out. And so we hope to have that group within the next couple of weeks. We've had a lot of great return on commitment with those invites. So next slide. Sorry about that, Mickey, if you're driving. And so the staffing capacity, our job is to help assist the Coordinated Houseless Response Office in implementing the strategic plan. And there, as you can see, the strategic priorities outlined, and being able to coordinate our funding, being able to engage the community, being able to streamline and expand our services. And we'll go into a few of these in just a moment as well. Finding space to expand opportunities for our unsheltered community members to get into shelter or housing, and then focusing on affordable housing and how do we really get ahead of this as an issue. And so with that, I don't know if there's more there to add. I know I'm on a team here, but I'm not in the room, so I can't read body language. Feel free to dive in if, Mickey, you have anything.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. That was
okay. So our job is to help fulfill those obligations and making sure that we can help the Coordinated Houseless Response Office achieve their strategic priorities laid out in the strategic plan. But maybe something that's even more important is that we're aligning this as a region. And the work that goes on is very specific to the Coordinated Houseless Response Office in Deschutes and the cities. But a lot of the community members coming into the Bend area in particular, or into Deschutes County, are coming from the outlying areas. And so how are we looking at this as a regional effort, but then also being very strategic with the Coordinated Houseless Response Office too? So to dive into a couple of the strategies a little bit more deeply. So priorities 3 and 4, to expand services and address the crisis of our unsheltered homelessness. We know that we have a lot of publicly held land in our area, which leads to a lot of large encampments. And so we want to make sure that we have a plan there to address that and make sure that we're not doing it in silos. And so there is a pivot, if you will, to what was the leadership, the executive leadership committee or whatnot for COVID. There is a bit of a pivot there to be able to actually use that group that's been convened and meeting over the last few years, which has many of the partners that are also impacted and an important partner in creating solutions to the unhoused crisis that we have. And so working with Janice Garceau, who is chairing that effort, you will see many of the partners here that are listed out. And so being able to use that as sort of a think tank to develop recommendations to bring back to the Coordinated Houseless Response Office to help achieve some of those goals. And so we have created some values and criteria and making sure that everything that we are doing, meaning as decisions being made, helping the Coordinated Houseless Response Office Governing Board ensure to the public that there will be broad communication and engagement of the community, making sure that the community knows that the CHRO office is prioritizing safety, not only safety for those that are in the encampments themselves, but the community members in the surrounding areas, and making sure that there's an impact on the quality of life in a good way for all of those that we're trying to support. And again, that's both those responding to the encampments, those living there, or those that might be in the outlying areas. Respecting and protecting important partnerships and collaboration. And part of this goes back to making sure that no partner is left alone. So we will get into in a moment some expansion efforts. And so if some of the land that maybe is chosen to put a managed camp on, and that happens to be City of Bend property, that the other partners that are listed here are not just saying, well, let us know how it goes, City of Bend, good luck. It's more, what can we bring to the table that also supports this effort? And so that we don't leave any partner on their own, that we're showing a coordinated effort, knowing that this is a community crisis. And then other criteria, I don't want to read it all, but just looking at that we are asking those that do the work to help frame the work in making sure that whatever we decide, we being the community and the Coordinated Houseless Response Office, that there isn't we're not doing it, we're doing it with the community instead of telling the providers what it is that they're going to be doing. The Crow office is looking to have that actually inform the work and the decisions, and so that we can make sure that we're putting the right investments into the right area. Okay, so priorities. Expanding, well, let me start with, there was a goal that it's difficult to decide, okay, well, we have over 1,600 individuals in the area that are unhoused. We know that we have almost 1,200 that are unsheltered. We know that we have the highest population of unsheltered individuals in our area. So what could we possibly have as a goal? So with the effort of some of the recommendations that are coming out of the PPR, which is the Public Partner Roundtable, we have identified a goal of trying to address 30% of the unsheltered community members, and that would get us to a number of around 356. And so to some that may seem too many, to some that may seem not enough. But this effort, if you will, frame it in that space of trying to take scattered site investments to be able to achieve, hopefully, that goal of getting 356 individuals from being unsheltered, unhoused. And so a lot of work has happened at the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. The recommendations, again, going from the PPR, looking at community engagement strategies, looking at a list of properties that could possibly be used for certain managed camps or safe parking, being able to identify what would we want to see in an RFP, how would we go about doing that, what kind of outreach would we be able to have, how do we engage the community. And so you will see the sort of steps that have gone into this effort so far. And we are at the place where we are putting the final touches on the RFP, which will help us solicit from our partner network. We have properties and we have some need. And so what do they see as the connection between the properties that we may have as a community that would be available for investment? What type of investment do they see valid or have merit on those properties? And what do they think it may cost to be able to maybe put managed camp on an acre or safe parking into a specific area? And so those recommendations have gone forward, and we're going to have a timeline a little bit later in the PowerPoint. But on this one, I'm going to pause. Is there more that you want to add, Mickey?
No, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And so now we'll get into the RFP.
Maybe just for a second.
Yeah.
Me, it's Barb Campbell.
Oh, hi. Yes, Counselor Campbell.
So much for being here today, or
Of
being
course.
here today, either way. So objective site evaluation template. Is that something you guys actually figured out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I want to give some kudos to Amy. Amy really helped to advance the work that we did in evaluating. So we went through a big process internally, as I mentioned earlier, with our own sites, making sure that we're advancing publicly owned property that would be workable. So there's some criteria. I don't know if we're going to get into the details, but yes, we did as a regional body look at and then use that criteria in looking at those publicly owned properties. So we have a template that, thanks to Amy, that we could apply more regionally.
That's tremendous. I mean, just that little bullet alone seems to me to be fundamental to this. And I can just imagine the difficulty and appreciate your work. This is great.
Amy, how many sites did we review with just in the city of Bend with that template? Yeah.
That were city owned or
Yeah.
that were.
That's what we brought to
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah,
Other
right.
City of Redmond brought
Yep.
sites forward,
Right.
Deschutes County, ODOT.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so great about this, right? Is that this group got together and said, what are all our best practices?
Right.
Let's put them all together and let's create this package that we can use going forward. I mean, that's a game changer.
Absolutely.
What's the time? Is there a time frame that's been set
Yeah, you'll
for
see
the
it.
30%? The target for 30%?
You'll see it in the next
Okay,
slide.
that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Segue.
Yes, and some of the criteria, and thank you to Amy, and thank you for your participation in the committee as well. it's a check the box. It's so specific and easy to sort of go through the topography, go through services, not just from does it have access to services, but also can you access the property? Can first responders get to the property? So it really is consolidating some of that decision making in a really effective way. And so as I mentioned, we're putting the final touches on the RFP. And COIC will be providing that solicitation for the RFP process on behalf of the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. And so what we're asking for is, and we know that it's this is not your normal garden variety RFP. We as a community have land, or maybe a property owner has something that or a service provider knows of property that isn't on that list, that's maybe privately held, that someone is interested in developing something on. And so the site identification is a big part of it, meaning what properties make sense to be able to utilize. And then the second part is, and in that, we're going to be working with the service providers. So we have a piece of land that's, south of Bend, and it has X amount of space. Is that best given the topography? Is that best as a managed camp? Is that best as maybe safe parking? And what type of program or what type of offering do our service providers see as valuable? Is it located next to maybe another provider that would make sense? There's some synergy there. That it really is provider led and what they see that they could actually develop. And then the next piece, sorry.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we are not telling the service providers, we think there should be this on this site. And I think that's pretty key to the success of this going forward, is that this is service provider led. Their list of sites, here's what we think we could, it's like a little mix and match, kind of what we think we can fit in that area. So it's really important.
Absolutely.
And for some that'll work. For some, they may want it to be more prescribed. Tell us what you want. Well, I think what we're hearing from the Coordinated Houseless Response Office Governing Board is that we couldn't possibly know, because that's really the providers that know what's best suited, and let us know, meaning to the staff, what is it that we need, that you would need, service providers, in order to achieve these goals. So it's unique, but I think it is flexible enough and well guided by the Coordinated Houseless Response Office Board in allowing that flexibility to achieve success and not predetermining what that looks like.
Yeah, and again, I want to point back to trying to really capitalize off of some success thing that we had that both Brooke and Amy highlighted earlier, where we took the same approach of having a two-step process with our RFP. Engage a provider, do the outreach, and do it in partnership with them. And then you move to the phase 2 of the contract. I mean, that was much how we kind of followed the process for the Central Oregon Villages. And it was so successful. If council remembers, when we got that contract in front of you on phase 2, there was no opposition. We really worked hard, and the provider really worked hard to engage the community to alleviate concerns, and adjusted how they operate based on those concerns. So we're wanting to follow that because there was a big commitment amongst all the partners in this effort on public engagement, hence that kind of 2-phase process. The other thing that I wanted to point out on the funding, so this goes back to what Mickey was saying. One of the purpose of bringing this before you today is to say, our concern, we've got to make sure that we can fund our existing shelters. So that has been our priority. And as Amy mentioned, a $3.6 million deficit that we feel optimistic going into the short session that we can receive some of those funds that are being talked about right now as the governor is putting forward a concept, and you heard from Eric Cancer about our efforts there. So depending on the outcome of that, which we should know in the next couple of weeks, the short session goes until March 10th. We're waiting to see what happens there, but we think there may be some resources that we could can contribute towards this effort. And we're looking more broadly than just money. Of course, the lands that we've talked about. We also have a commitment from the governor's office. So if you remember, we signed a framework between the state through the governor's office, Deschutes County, and then the cities of Redmond and Bend, We all kind of identified roles and responsibilities. And through that, the state has said we are willing to contribute $1.3 million specific to this region, not just that would be shared across the state, but to this region. They want to demonstrate their willingness to, they know that we are doing the hard work of collaborating, and they want to hold that up as a model across the state. So willing to put some resources. That 1.3 million is in the form of shelter pods. So they have an existing contract, and they're saying, as part of that, as we put this RFP out, we'll make that known that 1.3 million is available for shelter pods. The county has talked at a high level about $2 million being available for American Rescue Plan funds that they've held aside. They've got to go through some process to identify how those funds might be used. And then, cities of Bend and Redmond also want to identify some funding too, to put into the, regional pot to help get this done.
What's a shelter pod? Is that an individual shelter for one person?
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so sometimes they are in the form of a pallet structure. They don't have to. Pallet is a specific company. There's several vendors out there. And I think they have got a mix and match of some options.
When it's cetaceans, a pod indicates more than one
No,
individual.
one individual.
Okay, not like whales and dolphins.
Right.
A pod is an individual
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
A shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. It's hard to know what,
Yes.
once I learned that pallet shelter is actually a brand name for a particular, it's not something that is delivered on a pallet.
Right.
Right, yeah, okay.
That's so great to point that out, because people are listening, they're probably like, what?
It
Why is the
might be.
pot
Oh,
involved?
That's right, yeah, no, we always struggle with what do we call individual things. And can I ask another, so so back to this coordinated part, I'm interested in coordinating our support for kind of each other's projects, if you will. So Tammy, you have been an elected official. I'm sure you can imagine that our inboxes fill up with anything anybody is doing, anywhere in the region, kind of. And, I would never want, I would want to have that information that if the Forest Service is doing something, we're going to hear about it. And, how are we going to be able to support the Forest Service and say to the people who are writing us and our constituents that, this is so that's my question, Tammy.
So it's not an easy one, because it's also, everyone has different rules that they have to abide by. They have different funding mechanisms, but what the goal of the whole coordinated houseless response office and an alignment of the service providers and partners is that we are saying we have a crisis, not we, the Forest Service, or we, the City of Bend. We, the community, have a crisis. We know that we can achieve success by doing the following things, and we are going to be working together in leveraging our resources. So the Forest Service, to be able to do something on federal land, as we all know, would be a little longer to take to do than if it maybe were happening in the county or the city. And so that doesn't mean that the Forest Service has a free pass of saying, just let us know how it goes. The Forest Service is coming to the table saying, how can we support the staffing efforts to be able to help with communication? How can we leverage some of our maybe public safety that we have or other resources that we have? How can we bring that to the table and support an effort? And so what we are seeing with this effort is partners coming to the table, knowing that they may not be the specific jurisdiction with whatever it is that the investment is going to go to, but knowing that they have assets that they could bring to the table to be supportive. And so does that answer your question, Counselor?
I really think it does, Tammy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Meg.
And I think that, from a political standpoint or from an elected official standpoint, I think it's our role as board members of CRO to we're saying we're coming together and we're supporting this regional RFP, which I think is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And we're supporting outdoor shelter in our community. And the need for, for this. And I think it's our responsibility to then talk to, our specific, other counselors or commissioners or whatever, to talk to them about what is happening and show that support and make sure that support spreads throughout each of our bodies. That's what I would say
And
that from a political standpoint.
And if I may add, that's
Yeah.
actually something that the sisters, council president Andrea Blum and Mayor Richard from
Yes.
Lapine also publicly
Yes.
stated at a coordinated houseless response office meeting,
Yes.
saying that, we might not have sites that are, we might not be part of this particular project at this time in terms of having outdoor shelters at our cities, but we will be there with you together for joint funding requests, politically or.
And we're hoping to sort of scale up. So we've started with just Bend and Redmond in the county for right now. Doing this, and hopefully we'll get some results, and then potentially Lapine and Sisters might join on later. But right now, we felt like those two cities had put the most into this so far, and where we see more of an urgent need. I mean, there's needs everywhere, but that's where we're starting.
Mhm. And Mickey, do you know if any of the other pilot, I haven't been on a call in a couple of the weeks, but do you know of any of the other pilot programs doing anything like this?
From what I've been gathering, it's more, they're now developing navigation centers and outdoor shelters that
Yeah.
we have already been there.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
so
Yeah.
I
And
haven't
that's-
heard, but I'll
that's
double
really-
check.
this is
should be
really
proud of
leading-
ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
leading the way,
Yeah.
and thank you to all of the people who have done so much work to get us to where we are and where the RFP is going to be released in just a matter of a couple weeks.
We'll talk about timeline. I know that
Yes, so sorry.
you had asked about timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say, it seems like there's been a lot of progress since where we were 6 to 9 months ago also, and
Oh,
that's
yes.
really important to say that out loud and thank everybody for making all that happen. Coming together.
Great. As Megan mentioned, the RFP, the fact that we're looking to the service providers to tell us what they can do at all, what they believe is appropriate, instead of, in the past, we have tried with a site, this is the idea we have for this site, who can deliver on the idea we have for the site, right?
Yes.
So I think that is a tremendous thing. And then that other bit that I pointed out, Tammy, agreeing in advance about an objective criteria so that all of us are united in this process. We all understand how we've even gotten to the RFP to be able to say about a different jurisdiction, for example, that we're all in this. Yes, this particular project happens to be on their property, but we have all worked together all the way up to here. Again, that coordination of support, I just think will be tremendous.
And if I may say one last thing about that, I think that the service providers really appreciate that extremely, because since we first started 2021 with the Emergency Homelessness Task Force, we have learned that usually what happens is they receive a grant, an RFP, and it's basically they're having to change their business model just to
Right?
yeah.
Right?
And now we're actually listening to them and saying, this is what we need, this is where the gap is, and we're saying, okay, how can we help?
Mhm.
So they really are so tremendously grateful.
Mhm. And they had a part being on this PPR, of sort of helping write this RFP and create this RFP. So it's not, something, it's even more attainable.
Tremendous.
Shall I keep going?
Go ahead.
Okay, so just a couple of quick comments. Just calling out that this is not a destination that we're going to land at and then be able to say, yay. It really is being able to stabilize people so that we can actually help them get individually into the right resources and into what success looks like for them or their household. And that is different than each of us. It is different for each of our community members too. In addition, this will allow us to protect our natural resources, provide some sanitation, and also public safety. So and give public, our local governments more options to hold those accountable that maybe don't want to be part of the community too. So the next piece is the timeline. And again, this is anticipated, so we're underscoring it as such because some of this could change. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so we do hope to have the RFP out soon. And we are getting feedback from our service providers too on, we're going to have an open house and talk with them about, answer questions. The number one question is, well, what do you want us to do on these pieces of land? And so it's very different for our service providers, as you just recognized. They're used to being told what it is that we want. And this is we're soliciting your input into what's best. And then COIC will not be citing those and making all of the decisions on behalf of the local jurisdictions. We are the partner that's here to facilitate making sure that that happens. And so there will be as sort of this cadence going through and being able to then get to that end result, hopefully by being able to do it and tend to award this spring. That matches up really nicely with hopefully Mother Nature and being able to get started on some of those investments, in addition to knowing what may come out of the short session and any other funding that we may have reserved after the executive order funding finishes up too. So any questions on that? And Councilor Riley, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, so the hope would be then by the beginning of next winter, we may have some of these things actually happening on the ground. It's kind of.
Gosh, I would hope that actually that we much sooner. So this summer. So that yes, that it hopefully summer.
But ideally sooner.
Yep. And it really, if it's safe parking, it can be much easier than. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy, I interrupted you. I
No,
was
go.
reminding us that there are also weather events in the summer that can be dangerous. Council Riley obviously knows that. And yeah, the idea that March intent to award, that is a very, from my perspective, sitting here today in the middle of January, this is a quick timeline.
2 months from today.
It's 2 months from today. This is really great. And it's all on the groundwork that you on the Crow have been doing.
And I saw that timeline and it turned to
But no,
our
that's
two
what me
advisors,
too.
our two exhibition members. I said, are you okay with it? And they said, yeah, we're fine. We can do it. And I said, okay. Oh, that's amazing.
No, honestly.
That's very
Right, I
fast.
mean, usually when we see these,
Yeah.
the difference between the beginning and the end can be sometimes years. And to see that from the beginning to the end here is a couple of months is, and again, this goes to all of this work that you have done. This is because of this fundamental work that you have done, deciding on the criteria, deciding on how to do this RFP, is what puts us in this position to be looking at this timeline. So just can't say enough about our Crow, in particular, our Mayor Pro Tem, who I just don't even know. I know that her world has more than 24 hours per day. I don't know how she got that deal, but
Very small part of this whole thing. Just happy to be a part of it.
So we can go on to the, sorry.
Nope, I was just gonna tell you, what's next?
We could go to the next slide. And so I also wanted to add two things to this. So planning that we are working on that will tie into the Coordinated Houseless Response Office as well. And then some outcomes that we are seeing already that is leveraged by the work of the Coordinated Houseless Response Office too. So I'll hit staffing, and then maybe before we go to dashboard and public engagement, Mickey, then I could just pepper it with a couple of things.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we are in the final stages of the agreement between Deschutes County and COIC. Part of that is in the transition of an individual. And so there are laws protecting transfer of public employees. And so there's been a little bit of back and forth because we have two public organizations that don't look the same. And so we are in agreement that we are not just at the altar, we're doing this thing. So we are fully committed. It's just the details to the MOU to make that happen. And so ultimately for the staffing, what we see to begin is that we are sharing a housing administrator. In the previous iteration of the staffing, it was a director. We've come to learn that the synergy of this work is in that the decision-making is through the Coordinated Houseless Response Office board, and that the staffing is really to achieve what it is that has been set out. And so we will have a shared between COIC for some of the other work that we are doing in the housing arena, excuse me, and the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. I'm excited to say that we had a very light recruitment of 8 individuals that applied for that position back in November. We had not a lot of those individuals met minimum qualifications. So we internally made the decision to extend and cast the net again. And super happy to let you know that we have 5 very solid candidates that we are starting the first round of interviews with at the end of this week and next week. And then we will be engaging the Coordinated Houseless Response Office identified members to engage in second round. And so that is underway. We also are in final interviews for the housing specialist position, which it will mirror the Chris Ogren position right now, which is shared to the Coordinated Houseless Response Office, so that the work that Chris is doing currently of other responsibilities can be leveraged but yet peeled off. And then that will give Chris entirely to the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. And then we have just recently also brought on a housing program coordinator to help with PowerPoints and scheduling and research and all of the day-to-day things that need to happen as well. And that position is also being leveraged with the other work that is happening in the housing arena at COIC. The one asterisk is that we also have identified the need for communications. And so that conversation will be happening with some of our partners, as mentioned previously. That could be supported through another agency. And there's a lot of interest from our partners to possibly lean in there to support either through PIOs or actually bringing someone on that would work on the Coordinated Houseless Response Office team, but be funded by another partner. And so that's where those positions are right now. It's taken us a little bit of time, but I like to play from the I'd rather we go slow to go fast rather than fast to be at a screeching halt. So with that, Mickey, may I add a couple of quick things?
Absolutely. Yes,
Can
please.
I just ask a question? So if I'm understanding
Yeah.
right, it's roughly 3 FTEs that we're kind of targeting approximately per staff?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you will end up with 5, but you're sharing positions so that we can align the efforts that are happening in the region.
Thank you.
Yes. So brought up previously is the funding through the short session for existing shelter capacity. And as you all know, we just recently were working through the governor's executive order into achieving some goals. And so there is a 27-member group, which is called the MAC, that is overseeing that. But it is closely aligned with this effort too, because you're sharing staffing again. And so we are making sure that the additional capacity that's been added is continuing forward and we don't lose the momentum that we've gained. And so as the city of Bend is wanting to make sure that some of the investments that had been made previous to the executive order remain, we also are making sure that all of those investments in the community of Bend, Deschutes County in general are held where it is and we don't lose any momentum. And so I'm happy to say that over 90% of these investments had been made in the Deschutes County area. But through that recent effort with the executive order, we were able to rehouse 208 households, which ended up being 267 individuals, and created an additional 164 shelter beds. And again, most of those were happening in the Redmond or Bend area, but Deschutes in particular. And the two other things that came out of this effort that is directly aligned with the Coordinated Houseless Response Office strategic plan is the alignment of the data collection and what we're collecting and how we're collecting it. And then also alignment of partners. And I think that's what you're also seeing showing up in this short timeline of being able to get an RFP out, because we're leveraging this together and communicating together and aligning and streamlining the effort to the best of everyone's ability. So with that, those are some of the outcomes that we have. And then the last piece I would mention is that the Coordinated Houseless Response Office has a strategic plan, and that's what we're talking about today. But as a region, as I mentioned, there is a lot of synergy between people that are living and working in certain communities, and that may not always be the same. And so we currently at COIC have an RFP out for a regional planning effort, of which this strategic plan will be a chapter in it. And so that we can leverage these investments collectively and make sure that we, as a region, are really trying to address this crisis collectively. So with that, Mickey, I'm going to stand down and allow you to go forward with the dashboard and public engagement.
Oh, yes. So I'm not sure how the dashboard is going to tie in yet. I know that you are trying to align all the different MAC dashboard, COIC dashboard, HLC, but I'll share with everybody about the data dashboard. The Homeless Management Information Systems by HUD is managed by Neighbor Impact. Neighbor Impact was managing it on behalf of the Continuum of Care Homeless Leadership Coalition. That was their fiscal agent at the time, and they continue to manage the HMIS through today because they have historical knowledge, and they also have that expertise in the staff. And so last year they already started to do their due diligence in working with HUD to identify a platform, a technology platform. They received funding, but then the funding expired because by the time the funding was expiring, staff was, they had like a staff turnover. And then we offered the Coordinated Houselessness Office with the county and the city saying, what can we do to help you? Because this is a priority for the CHRO board. We have technical folks at the city and county. We have performance management here at the city. What can we do to help you? So they know, they're aware that we want to help them. And when they have capacity to engage with us, they're ready to, they will. They definitely want the help. So, but there is just some stalling right now because of capacity. And then with regards to the public engagement piece of the PPR, the Public Partners Roundtable, the next slide, please. As you can recall from earlier, the Crow, it's missing the circle, darn it. So on the left side, the Crow board approved the technical assistance package that included community engagement strategies and recommendations. There's two different ones. There's one that's broad engagement. So it's in general about houselessness. That would be more like the elected officials, the team, letting the community know what is this. It's going to be like a multifaceted campaign to educate and inform the public. And then the second piece is really similar to Amy's Central Oregon RFP, where they do community outreach for each project site. So by that time, that's in March or this spring or summer, we want to be able to do community education and information before that even happens. And the service providers are saying, please do that. So by the time we do this, it's not, we're not being attacked by NIMBYs. You hopefully have already turned NIMBYs into allies for us. Yeah, to YIMBYs. But anyway, so we had proposed to the Crow board, next slide, please. This is what they approved. What's this multifaceted campaign with all these several actions on top, and then the campaign goals on the bottom. And then we proposed $50,000 starting budget. And what we did was we leveraged existing budget informations from different projects that had similar outputs to kind of get the ball rolling. But CHR board said to please come back with details. We want to see the output and the cost. And so we're gathering that information right now. We do have that information, but it's from like 2021. So we'll have to like adjust it for today's pricing, or I could go to vendors and say, can we get quotes for each specific thing? but then, we don't know if we're going to get approved budget. So it's up to you if you want to spend that time giving me the quote and creating that quote. So, but point is, we're going to come back to the CHR board to say, here's the information. Would you like us to move forward with this budget?
And the elected officials have committed to do this roadshow, and the idea behind it is, what does homelessness look like in your particular city? And do it, in all of the cities that are a part of the CHRO. And, it's a real chance to want to do just some general education work, but also to talk about like, what are the gaps that we haven't filled yet in our particular city? And then also a chance to really celebrate the work that's already been done by service providers and that city in moving the needle as much as we have been able to. And so that's something that through this this RFP, we're really trying to do it in concert, and just to be there and say, hey, we're here, and we want to, let's all talk about this and share information and data that a lot of people don't feel like they either have access to or don't know where to find it.
I might suggest that we don't just want to educate and inform. We also want to hear from the public.
Yes, no, that is
we are
a very important component of it.
We
Yes.
do care about their concerns. I always try and remember that any reasonable person turns into a NIMBY at some point.
Yes.
Toxic waste dump in my backyard, I'm a NIMBY.
Yeah.
And how do we educate, inform, hear from the public in a way that gets them from wanting to help,
Absolutely.
understanding people are suffering. As I mentioned, our community is so generous, and educating them on all of the different things that are happening. Yep. So that's my
this
comment.
is definitely
Yep.
a two-way street. And I see it as like information gathering. Like, how
Right.
do you want to get information
That's
from
right.
us? How do you want to have this relationship going forward? So
Exactly. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's not just this is what's coming, but as the thing happens, how are we continuing to hear from the neighbors, addressing issues before they become problems? Yeah.
Right. And I think just to tie the engagement with the data together, I think one thing that we are hearing from community members is, please tell us the results that you're seeing.
yes.
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 Right. So we understand needs, but we want to know that the investment that we're putting in is making a difference. And I think we could do a better job of
Yes.
sharing that data more comprehensively than just on a project by project scale. And that's something that we need to do some work on.
That was another thing I was going to mention is here we are.
Yeah.
We've had another meeting. This one has been entirely focused on homelessness, houselessness. And there has been, the only problem we heard about was a water leak. All of the meetings, all of the information we have gotten, what we have learned is it's working. Everything we're doing is working. We just haven't been able to get the scale that we need for our community. And, that to me is so much the take home message, is that all of these different things, from a drop-in congregate shelter, and by working, I don't just mean saving lives on the coldest night of the year. I mean helping those folks get into permanent housing. It's just been remarkable to me to see the success. Again, even someone just knowing there's a cot for them, the difference that can make in someone's life, and help them to get on that path that we all are hoping to help people. So I just can't say enough, Tammy. Tammy, I'm talking about you. I talk all the time about all the dozens and dozens of people in Bend alone who have been elected officials, and how many, it seems like, kind of disappear with all of that knowledge and experience. And, I appreciate you, Tammy. I know that you are a paid employee, but you are still doing that tremendously difficult work of public service. You're using all of that knowledge that you have gained. And, just a call out to all of those folks who have already served the public. And maybe there's an opportunity for a little more service. And yeah, Tammy, today it's you and Megan who are the ones I just can't say enough about. And our staff. I know, right? Yeah, okay.
Counselor, thank you very much for saying that. And the only failure here is in not trying. And we will not get everything right. And so the community being informed about what we're trying, and for us as a community being okay to say, maybe that's not going to be the right pathway. That's really what success will look like. And so I'm grateful. And actually to all of you, I'm actually free. So which is great. But the one thing I want to put a plug in, which is really, I think, going to be counterintuitive to the general public. We are getting really good at collecting data. And in that, our numbers are going to increase because we are able to capture what the real reality looks like on the ground. And so I just want to put a plug for when the point in time count numbers come out, that we're getting better at knowing what the reality is. And that is not going to look like a decrease, but that is by design. Because right now we've always known that those numbers were underrepresented and not a true reflection.
Tammy, I think you just said something that maybe we've never said out loud, but I think it's really important for the public to know. And you didn't phrase it like this, but frankly, failure is an option. I think it's important that the public know that we're coming at this with this perspective. And if any of these projects did fail, if we did learn that something was not working for the community, we would not just be plodding forward, determined to do that thing. That we are collecting information, we are staying in touch with the neighbors. We don't just plop something down and walk away and hope for the best. And you know what I mean? I think it's important for the public to know that we do have that perspective. We're not just, kind of stubborn about this, that, we know the right thing and this is what we're going to do and this is what it's going to look like. So thank you.
And that's what we have. Unless there's anything,
Again, we have not seen that. We have not seen anything that I would describe as failure in any of our shelters, any of our programs. The opposite has been the case. What we have found is the more we contact, the more communication, the more support we find from people, again, because people do want to help. They understand these are our neighbors.
It's a good way to maybe end our time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Tammy.
Yes, thank you.
Our meeting
Yes.
adjourned at 1:04.
All right. Wow.